Okay, I got something going on with the bumper on this bus. This has been an issue since I bought it, but I actually think it's changed. I noticed yesterday that it seems to be moving. Let me get close here and I'll explain what's going on. The left side is in. You can compare it to the door. There's a larger gap here and it's almost flush with the door. It's actually further in over there on that end. And over here on this end, it's further out and scraping. Gap is different here. It's kind of tweaked down. Gap is closer here. So yeah, this is requiring some investigation. Now, we do flat tow with this, our Jeep Wrangler. The hitch is not attached directly to the bumper. The hitch is attached to the cradle and the bumper. It's bolted to the bumper and it's welded and bolted to the cradle. So any movement from the toad should be affecting the cradle as well. But it doesn't seem to be. It just seems to be the bumper moving. There was damage to this bumper before I bought the bus. There is a spring steel. Let me just show you. I don't know if it's spring steel or not. It just might be steel. See if I get some light here. So this bracket is on the right side and this is broken here. So that's going to be affecting this side of the bumper. There is some cracking underneath. I think it may be bent. The bracket on this side, I can't really see too good. See, that's intact. There's a big spring thing in the center. Can't really see it too good there. These uprights seem okay. I stuck a level on them. Of course, that's only going to be, relative to each other or what the bus is doing. That one over there on that side is basically perfectly vertical. That's the further in one. This one appears to be in a little bit more on the bottom, but oddly, this is where the bumper is out. I did find a crack in my cradle. It was there before. I don't think it's don't think it's getting any worse, but it's about 1.25 inches long, and I am going to have that welded. It's not going to require removal or anything. It's very accessible. I'm not noticing any problem with the bulkhead whatsoever. So, you know, I've heard about bulkhead damage possibly on these. I've seen it in other people's videos, repairs that they've had to make. There's no cracking on the bulkhead of this thing whatsoever. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm hoping that this problem is just in the bumper and not, you know, deeper. So I'm going to start by removing this bumper and see what I see. Get it off there. It'll be easier to tell what's going on when it's removed. Go ahead and show how this hitch is set up on here. So this is the bumper here, and that's the cradle over there. So it's bolted to the bumper and welded to the cradle. I'll flip around and show it on the other side. I took the hitch receiver out, or the tow bar out. The receiver's still here. And you can see, you know, it's bolted to the bumper here. But that's just, I think, to provide some, you know, stability up and down, as it's welded back in here. To the cradle. I guess I should say this cross member that goes across the back of the cradle. So I'm not seeing any cracking in this area, movement. And if the bumper was moving on its own, you know, I mean, it really can't on the middle, because this is, you know, this is joined through the hitch receiver to the rest of the cradle. So that's the part that's kind of bugging me about this whole business here. All right, so I've been proceeding with removing the bolts. The technique I'm using is these rivets, or these big, I don't know, they're not rivets, they're the type of bolt that's got the round head on this side, and then there's a square thing that's supposed to hold it from turning, and then there's a nut on the other side. There's corresponding ones underneath on the ones in the middle, the 4 in the middle. It's going to be fun to get to the ones here next to the exhaust manifold and stuff. I ran into a problem with that one down there on the bottom. That one, the round head thing is spinning on me. And I got some channel locks on it, and I think the bolt threads are boogered up or gone on it, so I'm gonna have to drill it out, unfortunately, I think. So that's where we're at now. I'm only like that far. I've got all that to go yet, and I'm a few hours into it. So there's the crack in the cradle right there. I haven't seen any anywhere else. This is a pretty beefy section here, and it's really accessible, so I can clean this up and have a buddy weld that for me. It shouldn't be too big of a deal. I'm not overly concerned about it. It's, you know, if it was a scrawnier piece or it was in a less accessible location, that would be very challenging. But fortunately, it's right there, and you know, it looks like, you know, there was something here before maybe that's gone, or this is previously patched. Not sure what the deal is there with that. This cradle may have been modified because, you know, I've got the 6V92 in this bus, and I don't know if the engine mount situation is the same on one of those or not. Some of you all probably know that better than I do, but yeah, that's where we're at the moment. So I'm just continuing across here. Also, I'm not noticing any damage or anything back where the cradle attaches to the bulkhead. No sign of any, you know, stress cracking or anything in that area so far. I've been back up in that hole before, back there. That's a real hellhole back there, you know, on the other side of that bulkhead to access the starter. I didn't see anything back there either before when I was in there. Yeah, there's a little modification there to clear the fan shroud. There's a custom fan shroud on this thing to accommodate the 92 because the engine sits a lot further to the right. Yeah, so there's a much greater distance between the radiator fan and the radiator itself when you got a 92. So there's a big shroud there. Okay, you ever seen a 4106 with the bumper off? That's what it looks like. So I was taking the wrong approach trying to get that thing off. The correct way to remove it is to unbolt from this cross member. You see where those holes are, where the thing attaches to those springs, for lack of a better word, if you could call them that, those quarter-inch steel straps, because yeah, it ain't gonna come off any other way. So now we're looking at the underside of my bumper. I've got it flipped over so y'all can see the damage that's been occurring here. There's a crack, pretty mangled up over here. It's all bent to shit. So the guy that had this bus in between me and the builder of the bus backed into something, we think, on this corner, on the left-hand side corner, and pushed it in over there. I don't have much of an explanation for this stuff except it may be due to towing. But the the hitch receiver attaches just by some bolts to the bumper, but that's not where it's mainly secured. You know, if it's moving, you know, I mean, it can't move relative to everything else because it's welded up under the cradle there. So I don't really have an explanation for this. If I try and straighten this out, which is not my forte, but if I do, bolt holes probably are not going to line up anymore with where they are now. I do have a TIG welder. I can weld aluminum. But I might see if I can just find another 4106 bumper. Might be the way to go. So that's probably it on this for now. I gotta figure out what my plan is here. So I did get to work on straightening out this bumper a bit. That's pretty bad right there, and I think the thing to do is to probably just cut it out square. This was suggested by a friend of mine that does a lot of work on cars. Just cut that piece out square, straighten it out, stick it back in there, weld it back in nice, because that is going to be really hard to straighten out in there. You know, he was saying something interesting, kind of an interesting observation about that. That may be damage from a chain, somebody pulling on the bus or pulling on something with the bus. Maybe it got stuck somewhere. And that is on the side that was out, sticking out some more. So that's a valid theory there. And I am going to probably just go ahead and TIG weld these cracks. You know, I'm not an expert welder by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, I think I'm going to give it a shot. That's right on a hole, you know, is where that's cracked. Same thing over here. That's a hole where that's cracked. See if you can see that crack there and that crack there. And my buddy was also telling me that you know, in bumpers and stuff, you know, they might just shim them to get them right. And so I could shim this with some washers or whatever to get it lined up right across the back of the bus. So that's the current thought process. Yeah. Oh, and these bolts on the bumper, they're not carriage bolts. They're actually they're splined. So they got splines in them. And some of those were stripped out. This one down here on this end was stripped out, and that one was stripped out. And because they're on the bottom, I'm just going to replace them with bolts when it goes back together. So, yeah, that's the update for today's project. Appreciate you guys watching. Thanks.